So the agenda for today's session is I'll do a brief intro about SPS. And after that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Qamar Sharif to share with you about this initiative of special interest group session on oil and gas. After that, our featured speaker, Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed, will be sharing his thoughts with you. And then the last agenda item is the open forum, where we welcome all of you to join and be a part of this discussion. SPS, we are a technology company. We are based outside of DC. We have been in business for about better part of last 3 decades. We started our operations in early 90s, and in Pakistan, we've been in business since early 2000. We have a presence in the Middle East also. That's on the business side. Our customer base spans different continents, of course, including North America, Pakistan, but also Middle East and Andes region. We worked in different industries. These include military, telecom, banking, public sector. And as we all know, entrepreneurship and working on solving problems of the industry is the new way of doing business. So we invest extensively in internal ideas in startups and academia, R&D, and innovation. And Dr. Qamar will be elaborating more on this as to how you can share if you have any industry problem or idea that you would like to solve. These are some of the teams that we have. If you're building an industry solution, there are certain core pieces that need to be in place. We always hear about Industry 4.0, but there are certain critical pieces that come together to really do that sort of innovation, especially in oil and gas. So you need to have people who are experts in dealing with data. Oil and gas sector is always very data intensive. If you are doing any innovation, you need sound data science team. So we have an AI team that does all the development. Then you need good, for example, hardware. If you're deploying a solution at an oil well, so you probably need expertise of hardware engineers, IoT, and so on. So there's a group that does that. And then there's a group that does all the deployments, which is the cloud infrastructure team. Both of these teams are supported by cybersecurity. We hear these days about the cybersecurity incident, especially जो operational technology के अंदर incidents हो रहे होते हैं. So it's not just IT, but OT also that is prone to cyber attacks. So cybersecurity is very critical if we are innovating in oil and gas sector. So we have a team that does that, and they follow this immune system approach. And then there are a couple of other teams that support these core teams in delivering industry solutions. These are some of the customers that we have served in the past 3 decades. These include telecom, auto and transport, banking and finance, public sector, food and travel, manufacturing, healthcare, utilities, and education. With this, I'll stop and hand it over to Dr. Qamar Sharif.
Okay, so this is our homepage of special interest group. I want everybody to know a little bit about this. इसमें you can see कि ऊपर हमने दो blocks हैं, industry propose an idea for innovation, and academia is that they pursue an idea for innovation. और अगर आप academia पे टच करें तो यहाँ पे दो आइडियाज सबमिट हुए हैं. तो एक जो नंबर 1 एक्सप्लोरेशन एंड प्रोडक्शन है, ये तो फैल अहमद साहब ने सबमिट किया है, लेकिन इसकी उन्होंने कोई डिटेल नहीं दी. ये मैंने एक प्रपोज किया है आइडिया. इस में बेसिकली व्हाट वी आर आस्किंग, एंड दिस इज स्पेशली फॉर academia and students who want to pursue their final year projects in their universities. So we are asking them that if they can bring well production rate from any well to their laptop. So this could be electrical, mechanical, G&G, any person who is interested in this field. And I will be presenting a seminar on this next Wednesday, and we have reached out to about 220 universities in Pakistan. This includes both public and private universities, and we will invite, we have various routes. We have contacts with some professors, some department heads, and also we will send it to the reactors of the universities, and they can connect with appropriate people, because we have experienced that if something goes from the top, then each department head will take some action. So we will propose, and if you want to propose any project, because students, final year students, they need to get some exposure, what industry needs to do. This is just a start of a project. And then if any faculty or students want to work on this project, that how we do production data and can see from a well on their laptop or on their uh, smartphone. I know Schlumberger, Baker, Halliburton's, they all have these technologies, but they sell it very costly. So with Internet of Things and Wi-Fi everywhere, so we can probably do this in a much cheaper and more innovative way. And then after any student or teachers like that idea, then I will personally be coaching them, mentoring them, or giving them advice one-on-one. And this is what we will request all the people who are here in this meeting today, that they take their time and submit some ideas, so that teachers, maybe from Mehran University, Sindh, or somebody from Peshawar, or from Islamabad University, or from NUS, some department, professor head, they want to work on some idea. So Hashim, please close this site. So if you want to submit any idea, you have to click on the industry. Please click on the industry, and then you can write down your name and contact. And then if people want to work on that idea, then we will contact you, and we will also contact with the faculty, and we will provide this interaction. So this is a little bit brief from me. So Hashim, can you please close this and click on Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed's name? Thank you. So I cannot say in words how much thankful I am to Dr. Gulfraz Ahmed Saab to accepting this and giving us the opportunity that we listen to him. Dr. Gulfraz has a wealth of knowledge. I wanted to say that Dr. Gulfraz was colonel in the army, and he was about to be promoted to brigadier. He was a gold medalist in civil engineering. Then something happened. And when he opened his eyes, he was in US, and he was in Stanford. And then he earned the gold medal, first prize on SPS paper. And I mean, I cannot tell you more. So please welcome, join me in welcoming Dr. Gulfaz, and I hand over to him. Thank you. He has been chairman OGDC, he has been secretary, petroleum, and everything. Thank you, Dr. Gulfaz. Welcome.
You're most welcome, Chase. Okay. First of all, this was the first interaction with the special interest group of Petroleum Club of Pakistan. And when Dr. Qamar, he asked me to give a talk, um, I thought of it, what should I talk about? And what came to my mind as the first thought is what I'm going to share with you, and that is our E&P industry needs a new vision. Um, as you know, whenever you have to reset your directions, whenever you have to pick a destination, um, it is the vision that needs to be developed into your undertaking. And there is a Chinese saying that if you want to look ahead where you are going, it's very wise to first look behind where are you coming from. So a little bit hind look at the industry, the state of industry today. I thought that I will try to talk about the new vision. Let me also say this thing that I'm not sitting like in Houston, Sajjad Saab, or Dr. Qamar, where they are sitting at places where the new technology in the petroleum industry is developed. I have essentially a limited viewpoint, but I will share whatever has come to my mind. So the first thing that I want to say, what is the objective challenge that we're all facing today? Maybe the members of industry, which is a very widespread industry, Pakistani industry, and some of the members are extremely competent, outgoing. They may not agree with my contention, but this is just my thinking, and that's what I'm going to share. First, our EV industry has reached a moment of truth. A moment of truth is when you have to stop, you have to look around, and you have to redetermine your direction. And that moment of truth, it needs a new vision. The vision would have to develop by the whole industry put together, but at least I like to emphasize the need for it. When we look at Pakistan's academic universities, most leading universities are, no, when looking abroad, I'm sorry, when you look at the most outgoing universities abroad, like my own alma mater, Stanford, they are broadening the scope and contents by introducing renewables and climate change in the petroleum curricula. But at this point in time, I want to contain my remarks only to the traditional curricula of the petroleum subjects and universities. While limiting still to the conventional approach, there is a need to adjust the curricula of petroleum geology, exploration geophysics, and petroleum engineering to include the technical challenge faced by REB companies in the potentially prospective new and frontier areas. So, what I mean here is that we need to bring our actual challenges on the ground into the academic learning, and by marrying the academia as well as the petroleum industry within the country together to a common objective. So the beyond the basic treatment of various subjects, which of course the universities have to do, they have to develop the fundamental knowledge of curricula among the students. We need to relate the curricula to our prevailing field conditions to make these specifically purposeful, relevant, and rewarding. This is what I want to emphasize, that beyond the fundamentals of these subjects, whether it's geology or it's geophysics or petroleum engineering, we need to cover the fundamentals, but thereafter we need to relate them to the applied conditions in the country so that we can make these studies more objectively oriented. What I saying the last point here is that industry and academia need to join heads in earnestness. This is a commonly identified point. It's commonly emphasized point, but the need now is that we actually do objective thought sharing and a common determination of way ahead. There is no doubt that neither the academia nor the petroleum industry by itself in the country can meet this challenge. It has to be met jointly. And when I say jointly, the academic institutions usually have sufficient intellectual resources, professional resources, but they have less physical resources, and therefore the industry has to come on board and take those initiatives. Talking about the prevailing reality, all of you are living in the reality, you're most conversant with the reality, but for me to make the case, I just want to create a picture. The reserves, petroleum reserves, whether it be of oil or gas, are fast depleting. As you know, that our major reservoirs are at the very fast depleting mode. And the reserve replenishment ratios are not anywhere close to the required. That is the real concern. if our reserves were depleting, but we were also discovering reserves at a fairly healthy rate, then the challenges were not as serious. Our energy import dependence is fast increasing. As you know, we are now over 45% of our energy is imported. But the foreign exchange earnings with which we import the energy, they're not growing accordingly. And then every now and then, when there's an oil price shock, it stunts our economy, actually puts the economy behind. So that is a challenge which goes even beyond the petroleum industry into the very economy of the country or the security of the country. New discoveries in the explored areas are getting few and far in between. You're all very aware of it. You're working very hard. You're working with all the dedication, but the discoveries are few and far, and they are small. And some of you have been putting up the creaming curves of the mature basins, of the sub-basins. They show very little chances of striking required size discoveries. So even the hope from the point of view of these creaming curves, if they can be taken seriously, isn't there for large discoveries unless we go to new sub-basins or basins which are not fully explored yet. The other aspect is that we did have a burgeoning foreign companies participation in our E&P business, but most of the companies have left or are leaving for multiple reasons, and principally the geology. Because other reasons like working conditions and security, those are the things that they may require more money, but if the geology is attractive and it's profitable, then they would stay. So it's a sum total: geology, working conditions, and security. When I say geology, I'm talking about the present time areas under exploration. Um, all of us are hopeful that the new areas not yet open to exploration were not explored in the past, but the cost and security issues remain daunting. These areas are, they have a hope that we might be able to discover larger oil and gas reserves because they are as yet not explored, but cost going to remote areas and developing those fields because the infrastructure does not extend there and the security issues remain daunting. But as I see it, the companies are banding together and trying to overcome some of these challenges. The quality of the technical graduates from the relevant institutions, apart from the position holders, is relatively weak. There's no doubt that our bright graduates are considered bright everywhere, but then the majority of the graduates who are not as strong professionally, they too have to be absorbed. Either they don't get the job or they do not add strength to the industry if it employs them. Technical challenges faced by the industry cannot be addressed by the academia. As far as the academia is concerned, we need to, as I said before, we need to improve their capacity through close interaction with them. And that would continue to remain a way forward, close collaboration with the industry and academia to improve our curricula and improve the quality. Some new directions that, if I can identify, we need to understand afresh. There's no doubt that what I'm going to say is in the minds of all the professionals. Actually, it's they are fed on it all through their experience. But the petroleum perspective of our geology will have to understand afresh by retracing and analyzing the tectonics of the millions of years since the Indian plate drifted from the Panji and drifted north, colliding with the Eurasian plate, creating the loftiest mountain ranges above the surface and very complex structuration implication below the surface. that you're all very aware of. The movement of the Indian plate, deposition of the ooze, maturation and migration of the hydrocarbons, and the storage of oil and gas in the tectonic settings of our geology needs to be better comprehended. And when I say that, are they not comprehended? Yes, this is your bread and butter. You know it, but I'm emphasizing it better. We need to go upon that to improve our understanding, and modeled for discovery of the undiscovered oil and gas traps. We need to improve our focused understanding of the process of generation, migration, and trapping to successfully target the undiscovered hydrocarbons. Now, these things you do on daily basis, you perhaps may not realize that unless we are able to develop a better understanding of all these things, we do not have the chance of discovering larger hydrocarbon reserves, which can change the industry's outlook. Indicative approach. Here, I would just want to give an example that Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was discovered by sighting the wells on the surface anticlines while flying in the air. That was one, end of the simplicity of identification of the hydrocarbon and the luck that they discovered it. But the complexity of Pakistani basins needs most technologically superior geological information and exploration technology. So that is a challenge. Ours is a very difficult geology, very difficult geodynamic history, and therefore it requires that much more technologically superior both information and technology. Latest technology of designing and collecting of the seismic data. Here, of course, the technology of acquisition of seismic data keeps improving. There's no doubt that our industry keeps up with that, because most of the seismic service providers are constantly staying in touch with it. But my emphasis on the latest. There are certain innovations which need to be brought into the application. State-of-the-art processing employing AI. This word artificial intelligence is now so critical that almost every aspect of living, this has made major inroads there. So AI-assisted interpretation and reinterpretation, selection of the drilling objectives, technologically backed drilling and pressure maintenance techniques are required to improve the speed, results, and the cost effectiveness of the exploration effort. When I say that, please don't take me wrong that these things are not being done, but the emphasis once again on better, because we need to change the reality. And here I just would like to get a view of the foreign campuses, and I've taken a short slide from Professor Khalid Aziz of Stanford University, my alma mater. All of you know him. And when I asked him, what is the current trend in the academic environment of the petroleum departments, and this is what he writes. In recent years, our department has slowly changed to include more and more research on renewable sources of energy and energy storage. As you know, these are the two global challenges on renewables and how to store energy. And the Petroleum Engineering Department of Stanford University is actually undergoing a fundamental change as their curricula includes now the renewables and the energy storage. And then Professor Khalidi says, to address the challenges of climate change, a new school will come into existence in September, Stanford Department of Energy, School of Sustainability. Our department will become the Department of Energy Engineering and Science. So from Department of Petroleum Engineering, it became Energy Resource Engineering, and now it is Department of Energy Engineering and Sciences, because you were talking about renewables and other aspects. There was a time when this school, Petroleum Engineering Department of Stanford University, produced half the PhDs in reservoir engineering in the world, and now they are not even going to call them reservoir engineers anymore. So you see what a fundamental change is taking place. Moving into the future, we will need collaboration between different engineering and science disciplines to address future challenges. In addition to renewables, we need to address carbon capture and storage. So then he goes on to say that we don't need to produce petroleum engineers anymore, we need energy engineers. So these are the trends. Obviously, these trend changes in the leading academic institutions of the world will eventually also bring about changes in our curricula. But before that, we need to be able to catch up with some of the successes which we have not been able to achieve in oil and gas, the traditional exploration. Now, the top oil and gas industry trends, these are some of the trends, may not be the whole list of it, but I'll just briefly touch upon. The Internet of Things. This is a new catchword, Internet of Things. We're all very aware how much of impact has Internet made on our knowledge, our understanding, and our working. But now we're not talking about internets in which two operators try and talk to each other. We're not talking about Internet of Things where everything that we put into use, that it talks to each other. The Internet of Things helps to improve production, optimize equipment, ensure worker safety, and monitor remote areas. The artificial intelligence and data science can help solve complex problems in upstream, midstream, and downstream operations. And this artificial intelligence is a blanket which actually covers very vast area of applications. Big data platforms, this is also a catchword these days, big data. Big data platforms can help the industry's data analysts draw insights from voluminous exploration, production, and performance data that all companies have. The oil industry is adapting robotics and automation solutions to increase workplace safety as well as the speed of operations. These things are becoming very common because countries abroad are extremely sensitive to workplace safety and also speed of operation, because that's where lies the economics of operation. 3D modeling, this has been with us for a very long time, but 3D modeling and high quality visualizations help create a realistic representation of subsurface reservoirs. When I talk about 3D modeling and high quality visualizations, it is the qualitative aspect, although the technology has been with us for a very long time. And I remember when for the first time in 1994, before I left OGTC, I was able to get the 3D data acquisition technology from China and raised a crew and applied them in Potawar for the first time, doing the 3D in Pakistan. So we have had this technology with us. We've been using the modernization through foreign operators, but then we need to catch up with the latest developments. Cloud computing, capable of storing and processing data on remote servers, can free up expensive local memory and computing capacity. So this is depending upon the policies of the petroleum companies, whether they would like to park their sensitive data in cloud computing or not, but one can consider using those computing as well as the storage facilities for that data that we can actually afford to share there. Immersive technology, including now, actually it's become a plethora of new terminology, augmented and virtual reality, or mixed reality, or extended reality. They show real-time information about equipment, tools, and their parts. But I would say it at the heart of all these technological breakthroughs are technologically resourced and experienced professionals whom we need to train and value. Here, for example, to those people who are much more versed to understand this, um, they would understand it better. But here is just I flashed an example, a game changer in seismic acquisition and processing, where the deep machine learning fault attributes have been added there along with the normal map, and it makes the visualization, it makes the assessment of potential prospects that much more clear and also more accurate. I would share here a likely example of the use of in the IT and AI, the information technology and artificial intelligence. We all have long been, after the discovery, we go through a fairly comprehensive process of appraisal of the field before we finalize the development plan. But this example that I want to share, it is to be considered part of appraisal of a field that we discovered. And this is application of artificial intelligence for the characterization of a reservoir. The word characterization of the reservoir has been with us for a very long time. I remember that a professor of the Department of Geophysics in Stanford University, he started the first course while I was there on characterization of the reservoir, and he used to make those models, very laborious models of it. The characterization of the reservoir still remains the most challenging aspect of petroleum industry. We can identify lateral and vertical heterogeneities and mapping of the reservoir fluids. Now, it is, although heterogeneities have been identified through application of seismic, but I'm talking about a more sort of focused identification of lateral and vertical heterogeneities and the reservoir fluids. By undertaking a design for purpose 4D seismic over the reservoir area after the discovery, during the appraisal phase, before finalizing the development plan. Now, this is since the area of the reservoir is small, so we can undertake a very expensive but highly well-designed and seismic with very aggressive attributes, so that we can identify these heterogeneities, we can identify the reservoir fluids, we can identify the continuity of the reservoir, and we can develop it by locating the wells at optimal places, and only those very many wells that are actually needed, and therefore we can cut down the cost of the development and make the development very efficient. So it is something like, instead of carrying out a 4D seismic during the developed field and production of the reservoir, we can do that before we develop the reservoir and in the stage of appraisal. Now, here, quite naturally, it's not complete unless these days we talk about the unconventional oil and gas, because that has also become very much a part of our oil and gas exploration production. The global unconventional oil and gas exploration development revolution has not only a significant economic impact on oil and gas resource increment, but also great innovation to the theory of petroleum geology, thus having important scientific significances. So we know that the production of shale oil, shale gas, does require innovation in production technology, in the drilling technology, like the horizontal wells and like the fracking. All these things have added to the scientific significance of this industry. And that unless we are able to equip ourselves scientifically with those developments, we may not be able to appreciate the significance and undertake the exploitation uh, the unconventional oil and gas, such shale oil and gas. Pakistan has long been identified having significant shale oil and gas resources, resource potential. All of you keep referring to it. But the E&P industry has not been able to achieve its commercialization and production. Now, the key word in shale oil and gas is commercialization. Actually, even if we are able to experimentally identify the shale oil and gas potential in a well, the most important challenge is commercialization, because all of you know that the commercialization of shale oil and gas has very different challenges. First of all, before you commercialize, you have to drill a large number of wells. And not only that, once you commit a volume to be delivered, then you have to continue to drill all the time. And what that does is makes the investment very heavy. Although in the end you are very profitable, hopefully, but then to develop the fields, average size shale oil and gas field would require at least $1 billion of development, which will take it through commercialization and continuous practice of drilling. That thing generally is beyond our individual E&P companies, although there are big operators like OGDC, like other operators who have big resources. They should be able to do that. But a serious concerted effort by the industry and the regulator all have to put their heads together. PPL, for example, I mentioned about OGC, even to an extent, Mari Petroleum. A serious concerted effort by the industry and regulators required to turn the tide and provide critically needed prop to the falling conventional production of oil and gas through starting to produce the vast identified shale oil and gas resources in Pakistan to give a relief to the struggling economy, especially our balance of payment. As you know that the national security depends to great extent on economic security and the energy security. And at some point in time, you, the professionals in energy, are directly contributing to national security. At the same time, if there is a challenge, then you have to come together and meet it. I here want to just share a moral, an example, and I picked up this moral from 17th century Europe. 17th century started with the Europeans still limping out of the Dark Age, characterized by the dogmatic hold of the church over the advent of knowledge and use of common sense in improving quality of life. So, you know, that is what the Christianity was encumbered for by this dogmatic hold of the church, that no knowledge could emerge from the brains of the knowledgeable people. It could only emerge from the church dogma. So the 17th century started with the same thing continuing. Here I want to give you examples. Like, for example, there was a social scientist, Bruno Italian. He was lynched alive indicted for heresy and lynched alive in 1608 because he advocated common sense And the church thought that he cannot attribute his success in life to common sense. It all comes from the Christian faith. Or the indicting for heresy of Galileo in 1640 for saying that sun and not the earth was center of the solar system. So this 1608, 1640 are part of 17th century. And but those very far-reaching movements like Renaissance and Reformation movements eventually reformed this society and liberated it from the regressive hold of the church. And here there are two attributes that I want to emphasize. One is the liberation of mind, and second is innovation of thought. These two attributes, after the liberation of the mind from the dogmatic hold of the church and innovation of thought, brought about a paradigm revolution. And the century ended being named as the century of science. So if you go over the history of the development of knowledge, then you have to recognize the 17th century contribution to science, some of the scientific discoveries, some of the mathematical developments that were brought about in 17th century are still very challenging. So within the century, um, coming under, remaining under the dogmatic hold, lynching a person who only said this thing that if you want your cow to give better milk, you keep its hygiene better and feed it better. He was lynched alive because they thought that it come from the will of the God. And Galileo, who, as you know, that he is one of the greatest scientists, perhaps one of the five greatest scientists ever in history, he was indicted in 1640, but spared because he was already 72 and ill and blind, partially blind. And his heresy was lifted only in 1998 by Pope John Paul. So that was the state of the mind of that society. But they turned around within the century through these two attributes that I'm emphasizing, a liberation of mind and innovation of thought. So what my spirit of quoting this moral is that these two age-old attributes of liberation and mind, innovation of thoughts, are still the very relevant attributes to take us to the required destination. So remember, the innovation is the key to the E&P success. So whatever we have been doing, those things we have to do better innovation in order to change the results. The results we need to change, and innovation is the essential thing for us. I like to share with a sort of concluding thought that I do not have the required professional capacity of lighting the path of our desired course of actions. When I said that we need a new vision, I do not have that professional capacity that I can actually identify essential features of that revision. But I do feel the need for raising the flag that we need to change the course. When I say we need to change the course, I'm not reflecting upon our strengths. I'm not reflecting upon our present commitments or our dedications. If the results are not meeting the objective, then we can only improve the results by changing the course. And that is the need. That's why I called it the E&P industry in Pakistan needs a new vision. We have among us, and that's a great asset. We have people, iconic people listening to this, like Mr. Sajjad. We have Dr. Javed Qamar sitting in Turkey. The most of you sitting here, professionals. I've been very, I may just mention in passing, when I was coming in 1989 to take over GDC, there were lots of things going on in Stanford. They said, Dr. Gulfaz, you will need to change 75% of your manpower if you want to really change the course of success there. But when I came to OGDC, I did retrain a number of professionals, but with the same professionals, 100% same professional, OGDC turned the tide. So I have full faith that we have a sufficient number of talented manpower. We have among us capable professionals, and the ANP companies individually as well as collectively, they need to pursue innovation to realize the fruits of breakthroughs in technologies. The greatest obstacle would be the inertia of sticking to our closely held thoughts and practices. This is the real challenge. You may have had very intelligent thoughts, very fruitful experiences, but those thoughts and experiences applied in certain conditions. And when the conditions change, when resources change, then you need to change your mind. So if we can change, if we can control our inertia and go for a new practice, new thoughts, I'm sure our industry is extremely resourceful and we can meet the challenge. Well, this brings me to close my presentation. As you have seen from the content, I haven't given you anything substantive. All I've said is the need for doing something substantive. And with the help of those who are more resourced, we might be able to find our path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gulfraz. This was an excellent presentation and certainly intellectually very stimulating. I'll ask Dr. Qamar in case you would like to add anything here.
Thank you, Hashim, and thank you so very much, Dr. Gulfraz, for sharing your thoughts. And I think we can open up for questions, so we can take questions, but I would request all the people asking the questions that they need to be very brief. We only have maybe about 10 more minutes. This was a 1-hour meeting, and then yeah, please. Okay, so please, Hashim, you can ask for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Qamar. So first, I see Asghar Sajjad hand raised.
Yes, this is Asghar Sajjad in Houston. Dr. Gulfraz, it was wonderful to hear those kind of concerns, and you identified that Dr. Khalid, Stanford professor, has identified that thing that the only petroleum is not going to work. We have to take the renewable energy as a part of it, And that's why in our group, we have taken CO2 storage and gas storage and data management and the artificial intelligence also, and solar energy part of our group, So we hope we will be able to do something good for the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Asghar. Next, we have Mohammed Safdar.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gulfraz Saab, for your excellent presentation and for the organizers to arrange this. So my question is that we quite often talk about the technology and the workforce capable of doing that. But I'm not a bit pessimistic, but we may forget the nature which we have in our country for the E&P industry, that we don't have large fields. We have very complexity and we have smaller pools. And traditionally, we have talked about offshore and Balochistan Basin. Success has been not there. Unconventional has to be yet seen. But I'm afraid we drill one well, and second, third, fourth, fifth wells become dry or tight or then our reservoir poor quality. So actually, we should accept or realize that we have a bit of relatively smaller, basically to explore. But then alternate, we need to basically, think more and more with the time. And you pointed on your presentation, that's what the world is going towards that. We are only producing 17% of the total production today, consumption today, and day by day it's increasing the demand. Thanks a lot.
Actually, you have certainly emphasized those very points that I was talking about. There's no doubt that we did not have the history of frequently striking reasonable size reservoirs, be it of oil or gas. But that is the problem that we have to deal with. That's our geology. We have to understand it better in order to have a better chance of success. I'm talking about new and frontier areas that we are hoping to go into, where we may expect better size reservoirs. But unless we bring in the innovations, unless you have almost hit the point that we have a very different and very difficult geology. And that is why we need to have a better understanding of it. A routine approach is not going to work for us. But one of the things that I mentioned to you, that if you do have a success and you have a discovery well, and then after that, instead of developing your plan and identifying from your map the likely location of the well, that you go through a very focused, very well designed, small area for the seismic, and then using that seismic and its state-of-the-art processing, you try to develop your development plan so that you have less chances of dry wells or low producing wells.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions, then I will just wrap up the meeting. And for Dr. Gulfaz's information and for the information of everyone, actually, when I was chairman of OGDCL, we spudded the first shale oil tight gas well, and it is still, it felt few issues, but we planned it first vertical well and then cut the core and then go horizontally. We had issues, obviously, fracturing, multi-stage fracturing was an issue. There was no company willing to come because there was no volume and nobody wants to mobilize all that horsepower to Pakistan just to fracture one well. So anyway, so I really don't know what stage that well is in OGDC, but I do know that we spudded the first shale oil tight gas well about a year back. With
Oh,
this,
that is remarkable, Dr. Qamar. I have a little thought on it, that because there's not enough volume of work and therefore the technology of fracturing, etc., is very expensive here. So what one thought is that if 3 or 4 leading E&P companies can join together to bring in the technology, and thereafter they can pursue their individual programs as well. So some kind of, that's why I said that E&P companies as well as the regulator, they all need to come together, and the government itself also needs to ease some of the taxes and other things in order to enable the industry to make it to success, and thereafter E&P companies can continue to pursue on their own.
So maybe Dr. Qamar, if you want to know me, I'm Mohammed Safdar, basically on National Major side. Basically, I'm not the operator working for OGDCL to give some detail, but one thing is clear, this well has not been fracked yet, and the reason is not because of fracturing limitation, etc. It just took the preparation and civil works and some completion readiness, and it's going to be fracked soon, inshallah.
okay, thank you for the update. And I know we have, Pakistan has its own challenges, and so we cannot solve all the Pakistan problems, but I know for sure that if we can help in any way, at least since I'm retired, so if we can only touch one light, I can maybe sponsor a coach, a mentor, one student, and maybe university in Jamshoro or somewhere in Sindh or Balochistan, thanks to IT technology, because I learned from other people. So whatever I can pass on to the next generation, that will be my hasana, and that might help me claim to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, okay, I did some good for somebody, so please forgive me. Okay, so with this, we'll close. And if you have any thought or ideas, please go to the website and submit your thought and idea. And the next meeting will be, inshallah, third Thursday of the September, same time. And we'll look forward your participation, and then maybe we'll have little more discussion rather than presentation. Thank you once again, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.